People of Reddit, what's the most desperate thing you've ever done for money? Story 1. I made $50 when I was randomly approached in a bar to be on a foot fetish site. There was no nudity or actual sexiness involved. Just a lot of pictures of women's feet on my face, chest, etc. It was way more uncomfortable than it should have been. Story 2. I participated in some market research for a new beer. Sounded great at the time. I get paid to drink beer? Anyway, it was a bunch of different beers in small plastic cups, all of which started out tasting like the strainings of the devil's underpants and progressively got worse. They kept bringing more out until one guy cracked, swiped all his beers off the table and stormed out yelling, "I wouldn't even give this shit to my dog." I still don't know if it was market research or some bizarre psychological experiment. Story 3. I was poor growing up. Really poor. One time, around age 8 or 9, I collected a bunch of buttons, wherever I could find them around the house, and then hit the street, door to door, trying to sell them for $1 a piece. It took me 3 hours to make $5. I was so excited that I finally had enough money to buy a sugary cereal, Lucky Charms. I went to 7-Eleven, bought a box and got home to eat it, but we didn't have milk, so I started to cry. I ended up using water instead. It was very pitiful. Fast forward 40 years and now I can buy milk and cereal anytime I want. It's great. I never take it for granted. Story 4. You know you have reached rock bottom when you start working in life insurance. On my last leg I got my insurance license and then learned the job was purely commission and you make more money if you are a manager. Only to find out that as a manager you have operational costs. So you actually end up spending more money just to get through the month. Then you find out it's a pyramid scheme. This is not an insurance company, it is a hiring company that had a revolving door that never stopped spinning.
Story 5. Held a sign for people to see at an intersection. Normally this isn't bad. However, it is a local thing to bully those that do by throwing food items like milkshakes and slushies at them. Which is why I was hesitant to do so.
Story 6. About 10 years ago when I was homeless, a kind old homeless lady that I used to buy water and snacks for was crying because she was $20 short of getting a hotel room for the night and she wanted to shower so bad. So I had a friend drive me to Walmart and I walked around the parking lot looking for receipts until I found one with something decent that wasn't food. It had a $40 case of diapers on it. So I went inside, matched the barcode on the receipt to a box of diapers on the shelf and went up to customer service and said my mom wanted me to return them. Got $40 cash, gave half to the lady for her hotel and spent that rest on food and drinks. She was so happy she started crying again and hugged me. I still think about that day a lot. Story 7. Participated in a sleep study where they had us wired up to electrodes to monitor our responses at periodic intervals across 3 days without sleep. It was brutal. I learned I cannot go without sleep for 2 days in a row. Holy cow. Thank you for all the likes. Story 8. I pawned some handmade jewelry that was passed to me from someone very special. When I got paid less than 2 weeks later, my items were missing from the pawn shop. I have never gotten over that and it makes me sad I never even got to wear her jewelry to something special. Story 9. I met a complete stranger from the internet to sell him some used underwear. If it were a send it in the mail thing, it wouldn't have been a big deal. But part of it was that he wanted me to meet him to give them to him. And then he would pay me in cash. It was a pretty good amount, so I went for it. We talked for a while beforehand and he was really nice. I didn't get the vibe that I was gonna get killed, and I needed the money. It was a quick meet in a Walmart parking lot. Nothing really bad happened. Story 10. I participated in a food study where I couldn't eat for a day before, arrived at the lab crazy early in the morning, had a tube put down my throat, and lay there for 6 hours as they pumped liquids into and out of my stomach. After the first 2 hours I begged them to at least turn on the TV, but they would only let me watch PBS so I couldn't accidentally see any commercials about food. It wasn't fun but the pay was decent and they served me a steak dinner afterward.
Story 11. I sold my body to a drug study for 3 weeks in 1991. We took a dose of some antibiotic every day and had blood drawn throughout the day. Every day. Pay was $2,000, which was sweet for 1991. Being in the drug testing facility for 3 weeks was interesting.
Story 12. I participate in clinical studies. Just ones that let me go home, lol. Just finished my second one, kinda weird to get laid for free health info and to take stuff that can potentially help or harm me. But overall have had a positive experience and hopefully this leads to helping more people. Story 13. I scrounged every inch of my car, trunk, under carpet, pulled out seats, to find enough change not to bounce a check. I needed less than $1 and had about an hour to find the money and deposit it. The banker lady knew what was up when I made the deposit. 30-some years later and I still haven't bounced a check. Story 14. I worked at a little Hampton Inn. My sister and I had a small apartment, so roof over our heads, but very little food. We would take naps so we didn't have to think about being hungry. I started lifting food from work. A few small danishes, some single-serve cups of peanut butter and jam, the commercial packs of coffee for her, and she would use just one for days. We'd buy bread and eggs mainly. I'm pretty sure the owner was on to me though. He left at 5, either went to dinner or home, then would end up back when I was on shift. BC he accidentally ordered an extra dinner, or his wife made too much again of chicken and rice or spaghetti. I'd take it home and share. It was just a rough year. My mom visited and was shocked, immediately took us to Costco to stock up. We were still eating off that food a year later. She bought us so much. Nothing fancy, but we felt like royalty with all that food. My definition of success is being able to go to the grocery store and buy whatever I want, without counting cost as I shop. Happy to say, I am a total success. Story 15. Many years ago, when I was a child and my mother and I were facing homelessness, we'd spend the nights at various places, like laundromats or hospitals. One night when we were really hungry, she had me dive into the wishing well to collect quarters to use for the vending machine. It's one of those surreal memories that stuck with me. Story 16. I have lots of memories of dumpster diving for presents during the holiday season. At work recently, in an effort to make remote work more bearable, my team asked a question about what is a holiday memory that is most distinct in your mind? So many people had these wonderful memories of playing in the snow or cooking something with their family or going on vacation to this place or that place. So many people had these descriptions of middle-class life because I'm in a white-collar profession that is dominated almost exclusively by middle-class white women. I didn't feel comfortable sharing my experience of digging through dumpsters for toys, for my siblings, my parents, as a holiday memory. I couldn't share that the most memorable thing that comes to my mind when I think of the holidays is when my family procured a Costco-size package of breath mints. And we ate those non-stop for 4 weeks until I got an unbearable stomach ache. And what I remember most about that is that I can't eat breath mints anymore because the smell of them makes me sick. But that is not the type of memory one can share with their coworkers, if they middle-class white women, and expect to walk out of that transaction the same person. So I don't share that part of me with people that I spend a good amount of my day. It's all a long-winded way of saying, thank you for sharing this part of you with strangers on the internet. It feels good to not feel alone. I hope you know that you are not alone also. Story 17. In university, I signed up as a lab rat for various studies. One involved staying awake for 30+ hours in a room with no sunlight, communication, or anything else that might give me a sense of time. Among blood and urine tests as well as various probes and monitoring devices, it also involved keeping a thermometer in my ass the entire time. $1,400 is $1,400 though. Story 18. I was newly broke as a joke and had a date in hours. She wanted to go to Red Lobster. I went through my car, parents' cars, sisters' cars, couches, everything, looking for coins. I had a partial used gift card to somewhere as well. I took it all to the grocery store, cashed in the change, sold the gift card for practically nothing. I had just enough to cover myself. If she expected me to get the bill, I was finished. I'd have to own up to having like $31.25 to my name. Luckily, she didn't. She piped up and split the bill. So now we're married. Story 19. Medical study in college. Hoo boy. I was told I would receive a free dental checkup as part of the study, as well as $75, 25 years ago. First they gave me a questionnaire about going to the dentist and if I had any fears related to it. I didn't. Going to the dentist sometimes involves discomfort, but it's always worth it. Next they hooked a bunch of probes to my face, which stayed on for the entire study. They then had me watch a slideshow of random images: a field of flowers, a toaster, a Rottweiler with teeth bared, a smiling woman, a dentist drill, a book, a gun pointed at the camera, an airplane, a dentist's chair, etc. Then the dentist came in for a quick checkup. No cavities. He then tells me I'm now going to use a Florida probe, which will measure the distance between your tooth and gum. He then sticks the probe between the tooth and gum of my back molar and I nearly jump out of the chair in pain. That shit hit the nerve and it hurt. He then applied the Florida probe to every one of my teeth, to the point I was doing a quick, panicky inhale every time he went in. When he was finished, all of my teeth felt like they were vibrating. They then had me watch the slideshow again. Remember the questionnaire, the probes, and the images? Oh, I get it. They're trying to detect a new fear response when the dentist-related images appear, you assholes. I seriously considered spending my $75 on a baseball bat and going back to tell them what I thought of their study. Story 20. Just to be clear, I don't have a very hard life and I've never been as desperate as some people in this thread. I was offered a signed copy of Albert Camus' L'Étranger in my early 20s. It's my favorite book and my then-girlfriend spent a hefty amount of money to buy this for me. Years later I went through rough times, and really needed money to pay my rent. And having no other practical solution, I ended up selling my beloved signed book to an acquaintance of mine. Funny thing is 17 years later he still had the book, and accepted to sell it back to me for the same amount he bought it from me. Cheapest loan ever, I guess. Story 21. A few years after high school, one of my HS crushes messaged me on Facebook. I was in between jobs and still living at home. She said she was coming back into town and wanted to hang out. I didn't have any money for a date. I took some rifles that were handed down to me by family to pawn shop to sell. They offered me a ridiculously low amount. I felt embarrassed and put on the spot. I wanted the date to happen. Sold the rifles. Next day we got to talking and she apologized and told me we would not be hanging out and that she was going on a date with one of her crushes from high school. Story 22. I was living with €1 or €2 a day that month. Asked on Reddit. A generous woman gifted €40 to me. I offered an artwork in exchange, whenever I would have the time to make it. Sent it. She never claimed it. Her account is still active and sometimes I wonder how she's doing. I for one, am doing much better. Story 23. Once when unemployed, I bought a bunch of king-size candy at Costco, and went door to door selling it saying it was a fundraiser for a church youth group. Made a good profit and was able to pay rent that month. Story 24. Spent 3 weeks on my knees planting tulip bulbs in a field in Holland in October. Bulbs were covered in formaldehyde and a layer of skin fell off my hands. Slept in a semi-derelict caravan and lived off raw carrots. Fortunately there was also some good hash and you could buy beer for £2 a crateful to take the edge off. Story 25. I used to pose naked for art classes while I was an undergrad. Pay was pretty good, about 5 times minimum wage. One grad student who was a good artist but kind of odd asked if I would do a private session of a few hours. I agreed as I was desperate for money. I figured that I had just been hired for sex. I was a bit conflicted but then just figured why not. I showed up cleaned and prepped and dressed to look good and it turned out that the artist really did want me to pose. During the whole thing they were polite but very specific on poses and it was actually a bit challenging. They were so intense. While not particularly good looking, the talent and effort was kind of a turn on. By the end I was half hoping it would turn into sex and they would keep telling me how to pose, what to do, etc. We went over the time but the artist was nice and grateful and paid extra. So I guess that I learned I would be willing to have sex for money in some situations. Story 26. I was expecting much juicier answers here. I made porn with my first husband and he sold the photos and videos. They are somewhere in the bowels of the internet, but I have no idea where. No face though. Story 27. I acted in some OnlyFans videos. It was with a girl I had a FWB thing with. I was not comfortable doing it but I was drowning in department and my EI had run out, so I agreed. She paid me / we made a video once a week for about 4 to 5 months. Helped me get out of department and pay the bills until I found a job. The biggest thing I sacrificed was my self-esteem. A few weeks in she admitted that she asked me because I'm kinda ugly and a little fat, but that just makes me relatable to her fans. It really made me feel disgusting and absolutely destroyed any sort of self-worth I had. Story 28. I wanted to pay for my kid's high school graduation ring. He worked so hard and was going to graduate against all odds. To pay for the ring and get it made and delivered in time for me to give it to him on graduation day, I sold my complete Sub Pop Singles Club collection. That included Nirvana's first 45, Love Buzz, and extremely rare pressings from the White Stripes, Smashing Pumpkins, Iron and Wine, Death Cab for Cutie and Sunny Day Real Estate. The ring arrived the day before graduation day.